In the last video, we played around with simple permissions, and as you can see, there's really nothing simple about permissions. They get pretty complex pretty quickly. Simple permissions itself makes working with permissions very simply. So now we're going to give you a good, I want to say a use case on how to use permissions and why you need them. So we're going to use something called context service. What context service allows you to do is list, read, write, find various contacts within the phone. So if we go to our actual phone here, and this may take me a minute to kind of poke through this emulator, I've got a test account in here as a contact, and we're going to actually go ahead and blow this away, but we're going to add other contacts and find them and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and just kill this guy. And I promise you in this video there will be lots of issues, lots of errors. You're going to see me just kind of go, what the heck's going on here? Because this is not a simple topic we're talking about. So because we're using two packages, first thing we need to do is install them both. And sometimes it does not like doing that, but we are going to do it anyway. So let's go to our pubspec YAML, add contact services, and then let's grab simple permissions. I've gotten questions before about, if you're using them, does it matter which order you put them in? No, it 100% does not. I, however, like to order them in the order that I think they're going to be used. For example, I think under the hood contact services might at some point end up using simple permissions, so I want to make sure that's listed first. But really the software in the background takes care of the permissions hierarchy and determines what needs to be installed and when. All right, so we've got both our packages get, and we've got a nice big exited with 0, meaning everything worked out the way we planned it to. Now, let's play around here with some permissions. We're going to be working with contacts, so we want to be able to read and write the contacts. So let's go into our Android, app, source, main, and crack open our manifest. Add in our permissions. Now, I should note, this is fundamentally different than the way Android used to work. It's true, but it's not true. It used to be that if you put this in here, that was kind of all you needed to do. And Android's really moving away from that model. And now you have to actually request the permissions as you need them. So that's why it gets a little bit confusing depending on whose video you're watching, because it did actually work one way and not the other. And then now it's all changed. That's one thing that drives me absolutely nuts about Android, is that things change so fast that when you find a great tutorial, it's outdated and nothing works. That is the beauty of Flutter, is that because it's cross-platform, it will be supported for years and years, and it will change as the technology changes. So let's do our contact service. All right, so we've just simply got async, simple permissions, and contact service. We are going to add a helper function here out in the global. Permission from string. So really all this is going to do is take a string value and convert it into an actual permission. Then we're going to say permission item in values. We're just going to find that value. There's probably a much simpler way of doing this, but this is just simply how I'm doing it. So we're just going through that list of permissions, and then once we find it, breaking out of there, and then just returning the permission down here. So why is that needed? Why are we doing this, and what is going on exactly? Well, we're doing it out in the global namespace because we're going to use this in our main function, and we're going to request the permission as soon as the application launches. Without any user interaction. So as soon as they launch it, boom, I want to make sure we have those permissions set. To do that, let's modify our main and say, well, we can't do it just yet. We got to modify this. Async, await, here we go. And we'll say simple permissions, request permissions, And we're going to say permissions from string. And because I don't want to mistype this, I'm just going to copy it out of my notes here, or it would be a very long debugging session trying to figure out why it's not working. So we're going to grab that, grab that. So basically, we're just going to request the read and write. Okay, now the hard part is actually out of the way. The rest of this is just writing code and building out the user interface. That's one thing I love about simple permissions is just right off the bat, you can just very quickly say, hey, this is what I want, give it to me, or else bad things will happen. Let's go ahead and make a global key because we're going to be working with the snack bar. We want the scaffold state. Add in our scaffold state there. Let's be sure to put the key in here before we do anything else, or we will forget and we will have a heck of a time figuring that one out because that error message is anything but helpful. Okay. Now, we're going to build out an interface and we're just going to follow kind of a similar design that we've had where we've got text and then some buttons underneath it. So let's grab this. Got our new raised button here in all its glory. Let's add a child to it. And let's say create. And let's just do the magic of copy and paste. Add a few in here. So we're going to do find, read, and delete. So we've got create, find, read, and delete. Let's go ahead and modify this a little bit. There we go. Let's run this just to be sure. It's going to take a few minutes to build this out. I have noticed sometimes with certain packages that either when you do a get from the pubspec YAML or when you actually go to build for the first time, it'll just sit there and spin its wheels forever and ever. You'll probably see that in the following example. When we work with the camera, I had a heck of a time with that package. But then once you kill it and then rebuild it, everything just works fine. So the first thing it's doing is saying, do you want to allow? I mean, we haven't even seen the application yet. We're just going to go ahead and allow it. And boom, in all its glory. So let's go ahead and fill this out because we want to actually play around with this. We'll say void. We want to create. And let's just take this. So we've got create, find, read, and let's add delete. And then I want another one just to do some interface here. We want the scaffold key current state showing snack bar. We want a new snack bar, and for the content, we're just going to say a new text with whatever message we want in there. That way we can get some nice interaction right on the screen. Let's go ahead and flesh these in. We're going to have create, find, read, and delete. There we go. Nice and simple. So for our create, we're going to work with our contacts package here. We're going to say contact, not container, contact. There we go. And this is a little bit finicky. They've got a certain way of doing things. For example, family name, I'm just going to say Karen's. Given name, I'm going to say Brian. And then this gets a little weird, so bear with me here. Emails. Notice how it wants a list of emails here. So let's go ahead and add in a list. And in here we want to add a new item, and the item takes a label and a value. And that's because you can have more than one email. For example, I can have 1,000 emails if I wanted to, and you can just add them into this list and it'll give you a nice one. It'll give you a nice email per item in the actual contact. So we're going to just simply have my last name, first name, my work email address, and then we're going to await the contact service. And we want to add the contact. Got a little ahead of myself there. There we go. Nice and simple. Now let's go into find and flesh this out. We want an iterable contact. And we are going to await the contact service. And we want to get contacts. And notice how it has a string query in there. And we want to find anybody who has a name like Brian. We want to get just the first person because I'm going to be the only Brian in there. But in production code, you want to do something a little more special than this. Now let's do a show in snack bar. And let's do contact emails first because we're going to have more than one email in there. And then we can say value. That's how you navigate through that list. Now let's actually just read the contact here. Actually, I got that screwed up, didn't I? I totally did. Let's move this down to read. I want to do something a little different here. So for the find, I've got my iterable, and let's do this. Let's just move this whole thing down here. I want to do something a little different for find. That's why I'm looking at this thing here. So for find, let's do Brian, and then I'm just thinking out loud here. There are people named Brian. Let's do this, just in case you have more than one in here. there. That way you can show the actual length. And if you're ever working with this code off GitHub, you can find out that, hey, you got to go into the people, and then you use the length, and you can iterate through them. Now for our read, we've inadvertently actually created this. We're just saying people, same thing, we're finding Brian, then we're getting the first one and displaying the email. Now for the delete, let's just grab this code. So we've got our contact, which is just our first person in our query. And let's actually just delete that out there. So we're going to await the contact service. Delete that specific contact and then show in snack bar. Okay, so let's flip back to our emulator. All our buttons are now lit up. Let's go into our contacts. I just want to verify there are no contacts in here. Kill that, rerun the app just in case. I want to see what it does. Now, because we've already requested permissions, the permissions should be cached and we shouldn't have to go in there and play around with them, but that's what I want to verify real quick. So yeah, application just pops up. So we're going to create, contact created, we're going to find, there are one people named Brian, we're going to read it, my email address is this, and instead of deleting it, I want to jump out into the contacts list and see, there I am, ta-da, and there's my work email. All right, now we can find, make sure it's in there, and let's go ahead and delete it. Bang. Find it again. There are 0 people. So everything's working as expected. One thing I want to kind of demonstrate here, and let me flip back and look at some code here. We're going to add another button just for giggles. We're going to add the open settings in here. Whoops, accidentally closed it. Let's go over here. Wait for this to relaunch. Didn't like it. There you are. I'm going to rebuild the whole app. This thing's acting squirrely. Why is my button not here? There we go. Okay, so you notice how the application popped up. It did not ask me for permissions. If we open the permissions, you can see we have permissions contacts. Let's see what happens if we disable that. As soon as it flips back to your app, it says, hey, you need this permission to work with it. That's why you put it right in the main. We're going to deny it and just see what happens. Notice how our application still runs, but if we go to create, nothing happens. And then boom, it actually kills our app because we don't have the permissions to do it. Let's rerun this. I'm going to actually deny, and then let's just kill the whole thing and start over. I want to make sure it's nice and clean and there's no question about what's going on here. Rerun this whole bad boy. And this time we're going to allow, and we can go back and create, find, read, delete, and then find again and see that there's 0 people in there. So that is a pretty simple example of how to work with permissions and work with contacts. And you can see that permissions are very fickle, especially on the Android devices, and I want to say each version of Android handles permissions slightly different, but the simple permissions package actually makes it much, much easier to work with.